So first thing, let's talk about what is database, what is RDBMS, what are the different types of RDBMS which are available in the market and all those things, RDBMS products which we have in general. So yeah, in the simple terms, we call it as a database. A database is nothing but a software package which stores the data in the form of tables. And eventually, this in the technical terms, we call it as a DBMS, which is called as a database management system. And here we have a data in the form of tables, and there will be a relationship between the tables. Eventually, the DBMS is converted as an RDBMS. RDBMS is called as a relational database management system, which it is there. And now we have various RDBMS which we have available in the market. So we have something called as a Oracle 11G. And now currently the Oracle 11G is extensively used, Oracle 11G, and you have Teradata, you have Sybase from SAP, and you have DB2 and MS SQL Server, and there are even the open source databases and Greenplum, Netezza. So all these are all the different RDBMS which are available in the market. So all of them stores the structural data. I mean the data in the form of tables. A table is nothing but which consists of rows and columns. When it is storing the data, that is called as a table. So to communicate with all these, so that is one thing that which we use. That language is called as an SQL. So SQL stands for a structured query language, which is used to communicate. It's a universal language. So it's a third generation language. So after your assembly level programming languages and all those things, so it's a third generation language. So which used to communicate with the databases. So SQL is actually broadly classified into three types. So one is called as a DDL. DDL stands for a data definition language. Data definition language. And other is called as a DML. DML called as a data manipulation language. Manipulation is nothing but the modifying of a data manipulation language. And the next one is called as a DRL, which it is called as a data retrieval language. And you also call it as a TCL, TCL which stands for a transaction control language, which it is there, transaction control language. And the other one is called as a DCL, data control language. So which is used to control the permission between the users within the database and permissions on the different objects. That is called as a. So SQL is basically classified into 5 types, and so SQL is nothing but a commands. You're not going to write a syntaxes just like your Java and C language. It is just a command that we'll use. And based on the commands, by using a different commands, we'll communicate with a, based on the different commands, we'll communicate with the database. So when we talk about a DDL, DDL means you're defining something, you're creating something, or you're defining a. So data definition language is actually used to defining the. So if you want to define something, let's say a table if you want to define, or if you want to create a table, or if you want to drop or remove a table, or if you want to alter the table, then so we will use a DDL language. So what are the commands in the DDL? Create. So alter is to modify it, and drop is used to remove the table from the database. So that's how we use it. And similarly, the drop, and we have the other types as well, that is called as a truncate, which is nothing but completely removing the data without undoing the changes. That is also one more statement. So these commands are called as a data definition language commands. So DML means manipulation. So whenever you want to add data to the database tables, or whenever you want to remove the data from the table, or whenever you want to modify some information, then we'll use a manipulation language. That is your insert. Let's say you use update, and you'll also have a delete. So insert is used to add a row to a table. Update is used to update the information in the table. Delete is used to delete a row from a table. So these are all the different DML statements which we use. And DRL stands for a data retrieval language. So you have defined the table and you have added the data. Now, how to read the data from data? So how to read the data from table or a multiple tables? For reading of the data, we use a select statement. So this will be extensively we are going to use in ETL testing as well as a BI testing. So this is something that which we are going to use, that is called as a data retrieval language. And the next one is about the transaction control language. So when you talk about transaction control, so this is like a saving of changes permanently and undoing the changes, commit and rollback. Commit is like a control S which permanently changes, saves it, and rollback is like control check which undoes the changes. That is called as a transaction control language. And we also define something called as a grant and revoke. Grant is used to give the permissions on the objects and different users. Whenever you want to give a permission on a particular object or on a different user, you want to give it to some other permission, then we'll use a grant. And whenever you want to take back the permission, that will also use a revoke. So that's how you will use the different commands in the SQL, which helps you to perform all these activities. First, we'll learn some basic queries, and then we will proceed further. We'll proceed further with the actual select statement. So, in order to define a table in the database, so we need to have a proper. In order to define a table, first we need to understand what is the table is all about, and you need to also understand what is a column and what is a data type that you need to understand. See, whenever you are defining a table, so table will consist of rows and columns. So rows and columns. So you need to define a column, or you need to define the structure of the table whenever you are defining. So before understanding or defining the table, you need to understand about the data types. What are the different data types that are available? A data type is nothing but it's which categorizes the data. So you'll have a different types of data when you're storing, right? So you'll have a character data, you'll have a number data, you'll have a Boolean data, you'll have a date data type, which stores all the calendar information and all. So these are all the different data types. So these data types will vary from one database to the other database. So when you say that data types, so whenever you want to store the character related data, only alphabets, then we'll use a character data type. And whenever you want to use a varchar2, this is nothing but which stores alphanumeric data. In the sense, it will store all the special characters, alphabets, numerics, all those things will be stored. That is your varchar2 alphanumeric data. And similarly, it will also have varchar2 alphanumeric data. And when you want to store the number related data, so most of the time we'll use a number. So character will store maximum of 4,000 characters, and varchar will store around 32,767 characters maximum. In Oracle, I'm talking about the Oracle database because we are going to practice all our SQL queries in the Oracle database. So when you move to the other databases, these data types will slightly vary. And when you go to SQL Server, it is varchar only, but when you go to Teradata and all, alphanumeric is called as a string data type. Likewise, the data types will be varying, but the functionality is same. So number of p comma s, so suppose let's say when you say number of 10 comma 2, maximum it can store 10 digits, and after the decimal it can store 2 digits. That's how you can define. But number actually stores maximum of 38 digit number, maximum number that it can store is. And similarly, you'll have a date information. So the date information is like which will store the calendar. So whenever you want to store the today's date, yesterday's date, or information like when the employee has joined the organization, all these kind of a date information, if you want to store, we'll use a date. And also there is another thing that is called as a Boolean, which we'll use very rarely. Boolean which stores a value like true or false, which will be stored. these are the different data types which are available, different data types which are available in the Oracle database. So whenever you want to define a column, you need to define a column of a particular data type. So first let's understand how to define a simple table and how to add the data to that table, and I'll also show you how to read the data from that table. So once we understand that, then we'll jump into the data retrieval language. So how to do that. So suppose let's say you wanted to create a table, and you wanted to create a table which will consist of all the details like a student ID, student name, or all these things which you have, and you wanted to create that table in your database. Student ID, student name, and course which they have joined, and the fee, all those details I just want to, and joining date, when they have joined the course, and all those things I want to do it. So whenever you want to define a table in the database, that is, we use a DDL language. So whenever you want to create a table, we'll use a create command. So how to create a table? So I'll just show you the syntax, and I'll also show you practically how to create it. So let's say you have something called as a create table. So what is a table name? Table name is, let's say, student is a table name which I want to create. And let's say if you want to add any other special characters. So whenever you are defining a table should be consist of maximum of 30 characters, and it should be an alphanumeric. It can be an alphanumeric, but it cannot start with a number. I cannot define a table as 1, 2, 3 student, but I can define a table as student 1, 2, 3. That is enough. I mean, that is possible. So suppose let's say I want to create a table with today's date, or student underscore whenever you are taking a backup or something. Let's say 20/08/2014. So this way I can do it. So special characters which are allowed are underscore, hash, and then the dollar. So whenever you are naming any object, so you cannot use a star as a special character. Special characters allowed are underscore, dollar, as well as a hyphen is also not allowed, and the hash. So these are the special characters which are allowed when you are defining a table in the database. So create a table. And whenever you want to name the different columns, so enclose all the columns within the parenthesis. Now I have within the parenthesis. So let's say you want to define a table. So that is your student ID. Let's say student ID, and student ID will be a number. So I'll just define this as a number of 10 or something. Let's say what I have. And similarly, you have a student name, so which you can define. So student number of 10 if I define, so what does that mean? Like it is 10 maximum consists of 10 digits of ID. It cannot be more than 10 digits. So that's what it means. It can be less than, it should be less than or equal to 10 digits. Student name, let's say if I'm defining it as a varchar2 of 100, maximum it can contain the 100 characters. Beyond that it cannot. So there are two data types actually, varchar2. Varchar2 is called as a variable length character data type. So student name, that is your, which you can define. And similarly, let's say the course which the student has joined. So course, let's say if you define, even this also, you just have it as varchar2 of 100. And let's say you have the fee, so which you call it as a fee. And then let's say this is your number of p comma s. So let's say number of 10 comma 2, which I define it as a number of 10 comma 2. And you can also define something as when the student has actually joined the course, that is your join date. So this is of a date data type. So whenever you are defining it, you need to define a table and then the name of the table, and then you need to provide all the list of column names which is in that. List of column names which are provided in them. So now this is called as a different tables which this is how you create a table. See, in order to execute all these commands, you should have an environment to execute it. So how can I connect to the database? So first we need to understand that, which I missed it. So if you want to connect to the database, there are two ways which you can connect to the Oracle database. One is by using the tools. So you have a different types of tools which we generally use in the real time also to connect to the database. So in the training, we are going to use a tool called as a SQL Developer. SQL Developer is an open source tool from Oracle, which helps you to connect to the database and execute all the queries, whatever you have. And there is a other one that is called as a Toad, which is from Dell, and I think it's from Quest Corporation. And you have the other one such as a PL/SQL Developer. So this is also another tool which you have to execute the queries. Likewise, you have a different tools. So using those tools, these tools, if you're executing the queries, it will give you the UI, better UI to view the queries. And you can also execute the Oracle queries from the other environment called as a SQL Plus environment. SQL Plus is a Oracle proprietary environment where you can execute all the queries by using the SQL Plus environment. Either you can execute the queries through SQL Plus, you can use SQL Plus and connect to the database. I'll show you both the ways how to connect to the database, and you have a SQL Developer Toad, both the things I'll show you. So if you want to connect from the SQL Developer, suppose if you want to connect using SQL Plus, there will be a Oracle client should be installed on your database. So let me just show you how the communication will be enabled between the databases when you want to execute something here. Suppose let's say this is a database. If you start providing an access on our database, what will be? It will be something like this, okay? And it will be, this is your, the SQL, let's say any other database. So this database is called as an Oracle 11GDB, which is installed on some machine. So this is a software package which you have. I want to communicate with this database to store the data, everything. So you can have n number of users here. So user 1, user 2, user 3. Likewise, n number of users can communicate with this one. So everybody will be provided with one user account, or you can use the same user account and then communicate also. So user 1, user 2, user 3, something like this. There will be a different users. So it's like a different computers which you have, and you're communicating to the same database. So user 3. So if you want to communicate, there are two ways, as I said. So you can send a request over the network. It is not necessarily to be both the machines should be connected in the network. You can communicate through the internet, you can communicate through the local LAN as well. So when you want to communicate, there are two ways. As I said, you can use a SQL Plus or a SQL Developer. So whenever you execute a query in your machine, the request will be sent over the network to the database. Within the database, the SQL query will get executed, and it will give the response back to you, whether this is succeeded or not. So likewise, different users can fire a different queries to the database. So this is how the communication will be established between the user and the server. I mean, user machine and the server machine. User machine means like our machine. Let's say you are a tester and you're starting you are firing an Oracle queries or something in your system. There will be a communication which enables. So that is through the Oracle client. You can enable the communication by installing it. So if you are installing the Oracle client, you need to communicate that using a SQL Plus environment, or you can also use a SQL Developer directly, which helps you to connect to that. So first thing, let's see how to use the SQL Plus environment to connect it. Let's say I have a database called as a ABC database. So I have a database called as a ABC database, and this ABC database I want to communicate to this ABC database. So whenever you install Oracle, you'll give some name and then you define some database where you start storing. Database is, I mean, it's the same thing again. So which stores the data. So if I want to connect to that database using my Oracle, so if you install Oracle client or Oracle software, when you go to all programs, you'll find something called as Oracle DB11G Home 1. So if you do not have a client or something, you cannot communicate using SQL Plus. All you have to use is a SQL Developer. In the real time, we'll use only SQL Developer or any other tool. We don't use SQL Plus because it is not so, on the UI front, it is not so clear that we can view the data clearly. So let's say I want to connect to now the user called as a SQL1. That is this is the database name. So I want to connect to SQL1 at the rate of ABC and enter the password what it asks. So enter it. Now when you enter it, this is a SQL prompt where you can start executing the queries. So if you want to check which user you have connected, this is a command. Show user is a command which it is used to say. It says that you have connected using SQL1 user, and you can start executing the queries here. So suppose, let's say, if you want to know the, if you want to find out the structure of the table, let's say there is a table called as an employee table. Assume that there is a table already which is created in this. So if you want to know structure of the table, we'll use a command called as a describe. So describe is a command which we'll use to find out the structure of the table. Let's say I want to find out the structure of employees table. Whenever you want to execute in general, this will give you the structure, name of the column, and whether it can be nullable or not nullable. We'll understand about this later. And this is a type. Type is nothing but the data type, number, varchar2, date, and everything. So this is how you can describe it. And if you want to even execute the queries also, you can execute. So whenever you are executing a queries from the SQL plus, anyway we'll use it. Either you need to use a / or the semicolon at the end of the SQL statement. To execute a query in the SQL plus, either you need to use a semicolon at the end of it, or you need to use a / to execute the query. So that's how you can execute the queries from the SQL plus. For this command I have not given because that is an SQL plus command, which it is there. So whenever you want to execute an SQL, suppose let's say I want to know the list of tables which are available in this. So I want to execute this query. This is a query to identify the list of tables in the schema. Select name from tab. So I want to execute, either I can use a /. So this, it has all these tables which are available in this schema.